these details? Okay.
Of course.
The roofing, the foam roofing thing, that was a turning point for me to see that our team was gonna work together. I want y'all to know that. That was really exciting to me when John proposed that. Brand new, well, it's not brand new, it's 10-year-old technology that our architects didn't know about, but Emery went, really?
Yeah.
Exciting, cool. And I said, but if it's not in Montana, maybe there's a reason it's not in Montana. So John jumped on it and said, I'll find out. So it was really neat to watch that communication between Emery and Jim. And Jim is, y'all, we got the best structural engineer ever.
That's excellent.
So,
Well, you know, it sounds like all three parties are open
yes,
to suggestions. And I was telling you, we have expertise in all areas: construction, structural, architectural.
Yeah.
So we're in good and hazardous abatement.
yes, oh yeah. And so one last thing about this walkthrough. When Jim, the structural, said it's okay for us to clean up first, so chicken egg thing, I said, okay, will you put that in writing? And he went, yes, but you'll hear from my attorney. But he didn't, he said, I'll get you a letter. And I said, well, you know, Snowy Mountain's gonna need that because they're sending cleanup people in there. And we're sending cleanup people in there. So I'm gonna talk to Tetra Tech today and just be sure he's good with
Yeah,
that.
and you know what? I know why Jim might be hesitant. You know, we asked him to do the same thing on Homes on the Range. I don't know if you know.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That the building's safe to occupy, and he wouldn't do it. He said, if you want me to do that, I'm gonna have to do an extensive research, an extensive investigation. But if he's willing to do that, that's great. It's really important because the county does not wanna put either abatement people or structural people at risk, period.
I don't want, if somebody gets hurt on this project, I'm gonna feel like
We don't
I'm
wanna
failed. I do
take a
not want
blind eye to that.
anybody
It's like,
hurt.
no,
Yes,
that's why we have a structural engineer involved.
yes.
So,
Well, he didn't hesitate, he was joking with me,
scared me
but,
though. Well, that's the reason I perked up, Trish, is because of what he said on Homes on the Range.
oh,
He said, I think it's safe to occupy, but I won't put it in writing. And then it's like, well, why not? He said, well, I would if I do an extensive investigation, which, you know, may have been prudent, to be honest with you.
did y'all pay him to do an assessment?
Yeah, it was a visual, he just walked it.
Yeah.
But like a $5,000 assessment with a report and stuff?
Yeah,
Or
I
did you-
think they did. I think
Okay.
they did.
Okay, so that's what I know on that. I did call,
Well, no, wait a minute, that got kind of murky. He did the report and he did the assessment. He told him verbally what he found. He didn't follow up with the report because they told him they didn't want him to. And this was somebody that worked for Tamarack before, no longer involved. So it got kind of, there was a relationship problem there between, Schilke wasn't real happy with them and didn't understand why. So,
well, I can understand his reservation, and if
Yeah.
they didn't pay him to, and Jim,
I'm not, whether they paid him or not, I don't know. They just said they didn't need the report. And who was it? Who was involved in that? We know the person. Maybe it was, never mind, I don't know who the person
well,
was.
the point is, you know, he spent 8 hours in Weir, and he walked in there all clean and everything, and he came out looking like Albert Einstein and covered in dirt. He had dug around and poked and prodded, and he knew as best as he could access it, he knew what was right and what wasn't, you know. So, yeah, anyway. So with all this sort of coming together, which I think this is a lot, I'm feeling like we've got a lot of good information this week. I called Tanya to be sure I wasn't stepping on any toes with Snowy Mountain because I'm dealing with Tetra Tech directly, and I know she has to be kept in the loop. So she just said, copy me on everything, invite me to all meetings, and if I can attend or if I think I need to attend, I will.
Okay.
But she said that what did she tell me? Oh, the QEP, this is a big deal. She has deemed, this is built a big deal budget-wise. She has deemed the QEP work, so everything Tetra Tech's doing right now that sort of got bigger. Like he told me when we did our walkthrough, Roger went, the report that we got, the phase 1 report from the EPA, they do it to say, okay, this is what it could cost, and here's what's there. But the complaints we've had about that report is, well, where is everything? Is it in that wall? Is it in this ceiling? Well, he says we have to go in and do a completely different sampling. And they do CAD drawings of the entire building. And so that he can like label each wall, ceiling, floor, this is contaminated, that's contaminated. You click on any room, he'll be an expert of where all the, so when he walked through, which Roger usually doesn't get to go on site, he said, I gotta call Tanya. This is a much bigger cleanup than I thought from the report that we got from the EPA.
Yeah.
So I asked him, how big
Yeah.
financially? And he said, not bigger than we're budgeted. You know, he feels like we could make it in what Tanya's, the maximum that but probably less. But he won't say anything until they do their CAD drawings and it's gonna extend their time because they're gonna spend a couple of weeks doing drawings, sampling, and so he has an extra couple of weeks of work in there. So their timeline's gonna be delayed a little bit. And then he said, the big deal that I heard from Tanya yesterday was the QEP. So everything that Tetra Tech's doing right now is considered, it's not administrative, it's, anyway, whatever the word is, it's being paid for by the EPA and not by our Snowy Mountain money.
Kind of like how they paid for the phase 1 estimate.
Yes.
Well, the beauty of what he's doing is he's making the scope definition for the abatement contractors clearer so that the pricing will be more accurate.
You're exactly right. Yes.
And that's excellent. We need that because usually the more vague, there's two things that happen. Usually the more vague the drawings, you might get a low bid, but you'll get a lot of change orders, or you might get a really high bid because the drawings are vague.
Yeah.
So
he's gonna take the risk out of it and really define the scope, and then they'll go out to bid. So, but luckily we're not paying for Tetra Tech, which evidently that is not normal. But
well, that's excellent.
Tanya,
We're special.
we are special.
Oh, yeah.
And she's actually paying for more. Snowy Mountain, they had a lower bidder, but they chose because they didn't have the experience with them. They didn't want to do a giant job like this with a new, inexperienced contractor. So they went with Tetra Tech because they have such great. So she says we have the best team in place.
Good.
Okay. About the developers RFQ. So Randy Hafer has asked if we could move our due date for the proposals from May the 1st to June the 1st.
What are your thoughts?
I don't know. Everything seems to be delayed. And now that John's on with us, I wouldn't think he would be opposed to having more time because he spent an entire week. What do y'all think about where our timeline is getting a developer? You know, we'd be looking at proposals instead of May 1st, we'd be looking at them June 1st, which we should probably have a budget. We should probably have shoring in place by then. We may have pre-construction done. I don't think we're gonna have construction done.
See, what I'm thinking is you might actually, you know, John's schedule was to the middle of July or whatever. That's just for temporary shoring.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that this process with this shoring in place takes you out to where you actually have the construction done and the roof installed September-ish. And in parallel, you could be bringing a developer on so that by the time that building is ready for a developer, he can hit the ground running and actually start developing. So I've got in my mind roughly September-ish is when I would want to have the developer on board and mobilized.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
You know, it means starting work.
Yeah, and if it happens to be John, he's there.
He's there.
Yeah.
And if it happens to be Randy, he's working with John anyway, so John may be the person doing the work. So
And maybe August, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe October, but the other thing, just as a
No
thought,
later September.
it's the only thing we're gonna have to make clear with Randy is, okay, moving this proposal due probably isn't gonna hurt us given the extent of work that's the critical path, so to speak. And in the interim, we can get, but once, and this is why this agreement with the developer is so important, we're gonna really have to understand milestones and we're not, this cannot drift, I know I'm preaching the choir,
No, I agree.
but already he's saying,
Yeah.
well, first he said instead of March, let's go to, or April, let's
Right.
go to May, now let's go to
And
June.
I didn't share, I did him an injustice. The reason he's doing this is because what happened with the federal funding with Central. And so the reason he wants to do the delay is he'll have a solid financial plan
Okay,
is not movable. It'll be, we could do this, we could do it fast, and it would be solid. So I'm actually for the extension of time for John and for Randy, because I think now that John's coming in as our contractor, he's gonna need a little more time. And I think everything that's happened with Central School has not been Randy's fault. It's been COVID, it's been, our previous commission who sabotaged the original fund. We had an amazing partner on 7 years ago, but in this council chamber, one of our commissioners defamed our nonprofit and they pulled out of the deal. Like made complete lies up. It was really sad. So I've watched this whole process and, it was the executive orders that ruined the funding this last time. So he's got now the funding that they're doing for Central is more secure. It's old funding for the USDA.
Can I ask you
And-
a question, sorry to interrupt you, Teresa, why did they take away the trailer over there, why did they take away?
The executive orders from the president froze the funding, and
So
so
we're
we
not
had to
gonna,
redo.
it's still not gonna be finished.
No, that's not true. So
No.
but in this case, it's not Randy's fault.
it's not,
Because
this stuff
this
is
has
not
to
Randy's
do with
fault.
So why,
Doge, this is Doge, right?
well, I understand, yeah, I know it's all that crazy stuff going on, but it's still, never mind.
No, I guess, you're
I'm
right, it's drifting,
We're all
but what Trici's
frustrated.
trying to say is,
We're all frustrated, including our developer is the most frustrated because he's doing this all out of pocket. So there's nobody more frustrated than Randy.
So why, all right, now my other opinion is, why do we wanna, again, push back another deadline? Push back another deadline. Push back
on
another
this
deadline.
one here, take the central school out.
All right.
It's
well, I'm
because
gonna
it's
push
not
back.
gonna hurt our schedule. In other words, by allowing him more time, it's not gonna get the developer on site any earlier if we were to, because we've got construction to do. So the schedule will afford the extra time, and why is that to our benefit? Because the whole issue with Randy, in my opinion, the whole issue with that incremental delay on that had to do with funding. He
Absolutely right.
needs money, he had a funding strategy and grants and tax and
Well, the
if this
project
gives him a
budget
chance to
doubled.
lock into that,
Yeah.
that's what we want.
Yeah, but this market, the project doubled, the
Oh, it's gonna
project budget
triple.
with
Yeah,
Central
it's gonna
School doubled after COVID.
Oh, it's
So
gonna
that
double
created another, I don't think so, that created another funding, complication.
Yeah.
So, I feel like, I'm for that, so what do you guys wanna do? I'll do what you
Yeah, I'm for it too, for what I just explained, but it's because, Norma, it's not gonna impact the overall schedule of the project, and it'll give Randy a chance to lock his funding in, or at least have high confidence in it. And he may not be the successful developer.
That's
He
right.
may not be. Yeah.
But, I'm speaking on behalf of other people in town that would get frustrated if they see this pushback again and again, and they'll be like, well, here we go, another central school, pushback, delayed. So, I'm speaking on behalf of
Yeah.
people in
So
town.
Norma, I have volunteered about 2,000 hours of my time. I'm an investor in this project, very small,
I understand.
so no one's more frustrated than me, I understand. But what I've also, because of that time I've committed to this project, I know in detail the frustration and the challenges. And I am very grateful to Randy as a developer to stick to this. He could have just said, given it back to the community and given up.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
Teresa's got good knowledge to know that a lot of what's behind the delays were outside the control of Randy. And the other thing I'm gonna say on this project right here, okay? We would not have proceeded with this project had Randy not suggested that we get an alternate structural opinion.
Yeah,
The opinion we had was to demolish the building, or
Yeah.
demolish it. So Randy's input has been, but I just am, I'm with you, we're
Me
gonna
too.
lock this thing in.
We
It's
are.
not gonna drift like.
we are. And on that note, with our developers, you guys, because they were both there at the walkthrough and with different hats on, what was really cool is at the table, we have a developer that does things through historic tax credits, and a developer and grants, and then a developer that does things through private funding. All through investors, and they both are interested in preserving. I mean, if Randy does it, it'll look exactly like it does now, and it'll be authentically preserved. If John does it, it'll maintain the appearance. It won't be done, like, his windows won't be single pane, engineered windows. They will be 3-tier windows that sort of look right. They won't be authentically, historically accurate. But we have 2 of the best, I think, options for developers for the market. So we're in a really great place that wise. Okay, I know I have limited time. Should we just table the vacant lot discussion?
Yeah,
Well, I'm still kind of in favor of it, but I think we wanna get a little more confidence in
yeah.
what this project's gonna cost. I don't think we're at risk yet, but at some point, we're at risk of the value of those lots going up high enough that it'll make a developer hesitate or lower their purchase price.
Okay, yeah, that's the way I feel, but
Yeah.
I think we're not at the time yet. Like,
We're
I wanna
close,
do
we're getting
it, but
close.
we're close.
Maybe in 30 days, maybe,
Okay. Okay,
But it doesn't mean that you might not wanna touch bases with them and see if they'd be willing to have a dialogue, if they would be willing to accept what we can only pay the
Appraised
appraised
value.
value.
okay, so maybe just email him what we found out on the appraisals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And just say, hey, we're interested, but we're still gathering data, and we should know something. I'll tell him 45 days or
Yeah,
60
something
days.
we'll have,
Yeah.
they're doing destructive assessment of what it'll cost to repair the structure. But we are very interested unless we get a really bad surprise.
Okay, okay.
There's 2 wild cards out here. What the structure's gonna cost
Mm-hmm,
and actual bids for the abatement.
right.
True.
So I'll tell him 60 days, 45 to 60 days, but we're very interested. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Structural and abatement,
But
okay.
we are limited, we can only offer X amount, and I don't know if there's any closing costs or what not we can absorb, however we can help
Oh,
with that.
okay, cause he was gonna pay that. And he was gonna pay his realtor, cause he's already put a realtor.
Oh.
Well, can we, this is a question for Ben. So when if we purchase those lots, they appraised at like $48,000. And
48.
he wanted like 54,000 or 50.
I think he came down to 50 for us.
Okay, so he wanted 50.
Pretty
Is,
close.
is there ways that the county can pay for closing costs or realtor costs, without including that in the 48?
Separately. I would think that the realtors probably run out of time.
Well, they renewed her contract.
Oh, they did.
The wife,
Never mind.
Does the statute says you can pay the appraised value.
Yeah, that's all.
But that doesn't say appraised value including closing and realtor costs, it just says appraised value, right? So we would be paying 48 for the property and then we would be absorbing the closing costs.
Closing wouldn't be that much,
What Jerry Lynn said is that the realtors consider the, you know, like, whatever you pay for the property, that cost, everything else is just administrative, but I don't know
Maybe it's something
legally.
you might check on.
Well,
I don't think it's a good-
I've researched it, I mean, okay, and I'll tell you, what I feel comfortable saying is you can pay the appraised value.
Period.
And then I feel comfortable in saying this, and we did. And the ancillary costs were not considered part of the appraised value.
Well, why don't I
I don't
just
have
have-
any law that I can advise you on
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, that's good enough, but it may be a moot issue.
Let me just see if he's
See
willing
what-
to take the 48,
Yeah,
you know, if he's willing.
Yeah.
And are you guys not interested in the third lot? Just the two?
Yes, we are, but that's something we haven't talked about.
well, you know, honestly, I think that buying these lots is cost transparent. I think whatever additional money we spend on it will recoup
Yes,
when the sales value of the property.
yeah.
So if it makes more sense to buy all three of them, maybe that's what we wanna consider.
Okay, well, let's
But
just,
the discussion has only been two, but if the third adds value to a developer, you know, I think it probably would, just as much as the others do.
well, when I talked to John about it, he said he'd turn it all into a parking lot, like a drive-through parking lot.
Yeah.
You know, I think Randy would do half and half. He'd use a green space and outdoor space for the
Yeah.
commercial, and then do the alley parking and alley parking lot. So it's two different approaches, but I think they both use
They could
them.
utilize the whole space.
Right,
My assumption may be wrong, it may not be cost neutral, but my instincts tell me that it probably would be.
okay. Okay, the historic documents that I pulled out of the building for the attorney, the museum's meeting in March was an annual meeting, so there wasn't time to discuss that, so I'm going to the April meeting to talk to them about that.
All right.
So that'll be April the 13th. I still haven't heard back from the Montana Main Street program to see if they had any additional funding that was
Okay.
released, but I'll keep on to that.
What about hitting the coal board up again later?
We're not able to go back to this, about the same project,
Project, okay.
that's why.
'Cause Mike thought that
It's just
might
the
be-
wrong year, you know? I mean, their funding doesn't come back till September, and you're not allowed to apply for the same project twice,
Okay,
so. This whole year has just been,
Well, I was thinking next year.
yeah, but she's saying it's the same project, so they won't,
Well, I know that,
or am I wrong on that?
you mean like after September?
yeah.
I mean, I guess I could ask that we could say it's an additional phase of the project, but by September, it should be in the hands of the developer, we hope.
Yeah,
Well,
true
you
enough.
might play that by ear, so would it be March of next year? Or when,
Some
what,
probably
when
in
would
that
it,
area.
well, when does the coal board actually consider?
All I know is Colstrip went back at least 3 times for the same
Yeah,
project.
But they
Over
defined
3
them as
years, over
phase.
3 years.
Didn't they define that as different phases of that project,
True enough.
right?
you could actually,
Yeah.
but
I think we'd have more luck with our local community foundation.
Well, yeah, but they don't have enough money.
Well, I mean, they could give us $100,000, they give us 50.
Let me step up from it, guys.
okay.
So
Well,
what's-
when does the coal board,
A lot.
if we were to make it a different year, when did we get the first, so it'd be a year from our first approval, right?
it was in December,
Yeah.
but
So in
their
January,
funding comes, their new funding comes down the pike in
You
September.
can ask the mayor about it. She's on the board.
yeah, it may be, let's say if it pushes past September.
Sure, we can go back.
Yeah.
And I'd like to go back to Signal Peak locally,
Oh,
'cause-
yeah.
but but I guess we can see, just,
Yeah.
you know, stay open to either of those, but I'll add the poll board to the list. Okay, and then, what are they called? Developer agreement, I've started on that, but it's still, I'm still in the early stages. What do you want me to do about Johnny Ray? His carpet, I mean, just
Ignore him.
tell him we
No.
can
Did we
consider.
tell him he owns that carpet or, yeah, tell him that the industrial hygienist says it's likely contaminated.
You haven't talked to him at all, huh?
I did tell him, I did share with him that about after Greg did the walkthrough and they said everything in the building is considered hazardous material. And he says it's contaminated. And then I said, well, there's a possibility that it could be cleaned, but now we've learned that it's porous, so it can't be. So do we just have that conversation with him?
Yeah, just let him know
Gonna have to.
that
Gonna have
we
to.
thought he could come in and get it, but he can't because he'd
You
be.
waited too long.
Does he, in the buy-sell, did it tell him that he,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Do you
so
want
it's
me to look?
technically our property,
It
right?
wasn't that
Yes.
detailed.
It's our property and it's our liability.
Okay.
Do you want me to look at the buy sale to be sure?
Well, I know we gave him a certain amount of time to get his stuff out of there.
Yeah.
Oh, we
That's
did?
well past.
Has
Well, I
that
don't
expired?
think actually the buy center.
I don't think it was in the buy
Yeah, it
sale.
may not be, okay, never mind.
But I'll review the buy sale and be sure. I think that's it.
Because typically, you know, these realtors make sure that if he had representation from, what's the guy's name who was realtor? Jim Minnie?
Oh, Joey,
Ken
oh, Ken
Minnie.
Minnie.
He
Yeah.
probably would have made sure that it said certain.
I'll look. Last thing, my contract ends with the county this month. Do you guys wanna renew it?
No.
We're thinking.
Well, you're gonna have to, yeah, put it in front of us, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll discuss
Put it
it.
on the agenda for next Friday,
Next
signing
week.
next Friday, for discussion. For-
Yes.
Yeah, discussion.
okay, sounds good to me.
I was telling Teresa, so I looked up, you got like 3 documents that are kind of outlined on different dates, and I started to put them on the timeline. And so, starting around, I guess September-ish of last year to the end of the year, there's not enough room to put all the activity.
No.
Now it's even intensifying, so you're juggling a lot. You know, when I actually took the time to look at it, it's like, oh, we've got feasibility study going on, we've got an RFQ for developer, we've got an RFQ for contractor, we've got this structural assessment going on.
We gotta have
And the whole
some-
abatement thing,
yeah.
the whole asbestos, so you got like 5 paths, and it's really, really a lot of work going on, I think it's excellent.
Thank you, Bob. I really love it. It's
Yeah,
so
it's
exciting. I don't wanna do this ever again, but I really love
But
it.
with that said,
It's
we're gonna have to
exciting.
cut your rate.
No, at the same time, we should be working on the homes on the range, but we're letting them do that, and they seem to be,
Yeah, the board, I think, has that under control, they're working on right now, they got their money and they're putting out their RFPs for the architects that is gonna do their
that's another
PER
big
or
project.
architects, what do they call that? Architect something report,
Oh,
it's not a PER.
PAR,
Preliminary
preliminary
architect report.
architectural report.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Part of that will include a PER, an engineer.
yeah, exactly.
that's right.
And that's the key there, so the role that I'm playing, the engineers, that's why you guys pay such exorbitant amounts to engineering firms, is because their project managers are their grant writers. That's their team that does all that work. So like, that's your option. That's why I've been saying to the city and the county, if the county and the city, and I do not want the job, I wanna be sure y'all know that up front. If our community had a development person that could facilitate these programs, then you'd pay them to do that work and work with your engineering firm. So instead of paying their grant staff to do the project development and do the implementation and that kind of
Another
stuff.
department.
It's a new department.
Well, you know, and so when I look at the cost benefit of it, let's say you pay somebody, I'm gonna throw a number out, 150 grand a year to be our developer, grant writer. And assuming that they have that expertise and they know what's out